All right, now we want to get a check on the forecast.
Yep.
Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin standing by with the latest to give us an update on where the storm is right now. And of course, you know, Lily just talked about times changing. Apparently, people are going to have to start making some adjustments based on that change in expected landfall time.
Right, and I guess if there's any change in time, maybe it's a little bit better that it's later and not sooner, to where people need to start making those plans immediately. You do have a little bit of time and maybe a little bit more time early tomorrow before the onset of some of those tropical storm force winds begin spreading from the coast and further inland throughout the day. So the very latest, and again, this is actually, we have an update at 10:20. The hurricane hunters were able to find some stronger winds and slightly lower pressure. So the winds have come up to now 85 miles an hour and pressure at 979. Now that doesn't change anything, but sometimes with these storms in proximity to land, you sometimes get these kind of intermediary advisories or updates as new data is presented. And one thing we've been looking at is that little area of convection, thunderstorms near the center, and obviously the hurricane hunters were able to find winds wind sustained of 85 miles an hour. So it's not too far off of that kind of high-end threshold that the Hurricane Center was thinking we would see in the strength tomorrow and right up to the point of landfall. So we'll see if that's something that continues. Again, we'll get new information at 1 a.m. officially. There could be some in between. We won't get a new forecasted track intensity and all until 4 a.m. So we've got kind of the through the overnight period to see if this continues, that strength continues, and if that is then taken into account for a forecast intensity at landfall. And again, we just got the new track, so another one doesn't come out until 4 a.m. With that structure and the winds right around the center, it is definitely trying to get better organized and strengthen a bit. I noticed, though, that the wind, or at least the structure around the core of the storm, looked like it kind of broadened out a little bit. It does appear as though some thunderstorms are starting to intensify a bit around that core. Thankfully, if it was going to start kind of finding itself with regards to getting that energy concentrated and start strengthening, better now with only about 12 hours to go before it's nearing the coast, and certainly well inland within 24 hours. This is the time that you want this to try and do any kind of strengthening, because that window of opportunity is quickly closing. As we head later into the day tomorrow, or really early tomorrow morning through the later part of the night, we will see if the Hurricane Center maintains 90. Again, we're only 5 miles an hour away from that now, so they might bump those winds up right before landfall. Again, if that is the case, then we could be looking at a possible Category 2. Again, that is not what the models have been indicating, and we will see if this new burst of winds, of maximum winds now, continues during the overnight. It's possible in later passes of the hurricane hunters, they no longer find even 85 mile an hour winds. So again, this is brand new. We will see if it is a trend which continues. Doesn't really change much in the way of our thinking with regards to the landfall position and timing for tomorrow. The intensity could increase a bit if this is a trend that does continue through the overnight period. Models have really not shifted. We're kind of honing in on somewhere Eastern Vermilion Bay, Western Terrebonne Bay, somewhere around that as the likely landfall position. However, we actually have all the way to just west of Vermilion Bay to into Terrebonne Bay as all within the cone of uncertainty as to where that eventual landfall will be. If we were able to find winds of 85 miles an hour, it is not too far away from the center, or those winds do not extend very far away from the center, because that buoy that we've been watching very closely, very near the center, those sustained winds are only at 43 miles an hour and gusting up to about 60. So what we're going to be watching tomorrow, the tropical winds, those begin somewhat in the morning for the coast, but really more into the midday and through the night. That is when we see the 50 to 60 mile an hour sustained wind potential, and at times some winds gusting. Really, the threat is going to be for the prolonged sustained winds at times near the kind of hurricane criteria. That would be just above what would be normal severe thunderstorm type winds, and that does cause some damage. It would just be over a larger scale. So this would be the time that you would need to secure those items. Again, if there is any positive with the maybe later landfall, is that you do have a little bit more time early tomorrow morning to get things put away. Throughout the day, we're looking at that storm surge. Water levels have already been coming up. Tides will start going out by the time the highest surge is moving in. not going to exactly counteract each other, but it's a little bit helpful. What you would need to do is get to higher ground, and the rainfall, that'll probably start at some point tomorrow morning. It doesn't look like it'll be late tonight. It won't be until the storm itself is getting a little bit closer, and that will be through late tomorrow night. 4 to 6 inches isolated, say maybe about 6 to 8, and higher within either some of the rain bands that set up and certainly within the path of where the storm is going to be passing over. You will want to avoid any flooded roads. You just don't know how deep it is. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate what is the road and what is one of our canals. You do not want to mess with that. Here's what the models are saying with kind of the overlay of the Hurricane Center's forecast. Not much of a difference in the GFS. Timing-wise, about the same. Strength-wise, about the same. Also indicating kind of that drier air. See the lack of the rainfall on the western, southern, and even eastern end. It may be that the heaviest rain is right near the center and just off to the west. That is exactly what the Euro has been saying as well. We start to see that wind shear and dry air kind of take over. So what may be a little bit better of a structured storm in the near future through overnight and into early tomorrow becomes a little bit more lopsided with the heavier rain on the western, the cleaner side of the storm as we get toward landfall and moving inland. So it may be, if it does follow this path, some of the heaviest of the rain may be kind of beyond from Baton Rouge out toward the Atchafalaya Basin and Lafayette. If we're going to get any heavy rainfall, it'd be best if it was out over the Atchafalaya Basin, not really affecting anyone. Those winds start picking up. Again, a bit of a breeze we've had overnight or for tonight through the overnight, and then really starting to pick up throughout the day tomorrow. So that's why I'm saying I think you'll still have, at least based on the wind, some time in the morning. You may be dealing with some of the heavier rainfall, but I do think as far as the winds go, you will still be able to get out and do a few things. Wouldn't recommend going driving, but if you do need to go check on someone, property, pets, you still have some time in the morning, and then by the afternoon and evening, you'll want to be wherever you're going to stay through the night. Good news this will take maybe about 6-7 hours to move throughout Louisiana, and then it will be gone with improving conditions as we head into early Thursday morning. Rainfall totals will obviously be higher within some of the rain bands that we see set up, especially if we get any kind of training with the heavy rainfall just following kind of the same path, or wherever the storm makes landfall and moves over land. Remember, it may be right along that center line and just off to the west of the storm center as we head throughout the day tomorrow. Storm surge total numbers have really not changed. We are still expecting about the 3 to 5 at the highest from the lake waters. And again, this is taking into account that strong southeasterly wind piling up the water from Lake Bourne, Chandeleur Sound into the lake, and then that water has to go somewhere. It makes its way into Lake Maurepas. It floods southern Tangipahoa Parish, all of Lakeshore Drive, Madisonville, Mandeville, Lacombe, out towards Slidell, and then makes its way into the river parishes. As far as around the Chandeleur Sound, also about 3 to 5, 4 to 7 for Barataria Bay, Terrebonne Bay, Vermilion Bay, right at near where landfall is likely to occur. We're looking at about 5 to 10 feet. Low end threat for some isolated tornadoes, especially with the storm moving inland. But even before some of those outer bands, if we start seeing those even before the storm makes landfall, some of those outer bands can be associated with some weak little spin up tornadoes. Again, they tend not to be very strong and usually don't last for very long. And we tend to see kind of countless warnings issued with a tornado possibly moving. Sometimes it usually is like at 60 miles an hour. So they're just booking it. By the time we've even tracked it on radar, it's already a few miles away from where we thought it was. So they usually are very, very fast moving and very weak. So thankfully that is not a huge concern. What we're waiting for is this. This is the upper trough that'll start that forward speed to pick up. Right now it's only been at about 10 miles an hour. Hopefully with that trough approaching, we will start to see that forward speed increase. What that upper troughing is also going to help to do is start the wind shear, which will help to rip apart the storm, or at least kind of maintain its strength if it's able to strengthen further during the overnight. Dry air also wrapping around the center as it nears the coast. That is going to play a huge role in just how much rain accumulation we see across southeast Louisiana. All big factors that are sometimes more unknowns than knowns as we look at possible impacts. We always kind of prepare for the worst. That's why a lot of our totals, heights above water for storm surge, rainfall totals, wind speeds are usually kind of at the high end of what we are expecting. We want to at least warn you with what is possible as what is more likely. And sometimes even the Hurricane Center will give you kind of the worst case scenario and then kind of the possible outcomes of certain impacts. So that's what we're looking at, more of the worst case scenarios for the region for our impacts. During the day tomorrow, we'll expect several rounds of heavy storms. Not everyone will get into those flooding rains, but many will with the outer bands. Rain, though, starts wrapping up. That 40% is really more for around the 2, 3, 4 a.m. time frame. I think that rain will be gone by the time a lot of folks are waking up at sunrise and afterwards. And then some very nice conditions for anyone that is without power. Hopefully it's not for very long, or anyone that wants to get outside and start cleaning up. I think the weather is going to be very pleasant as we continue on through this weekend.